Thanks, Heather. And now Susan O'Connor and our Editorial Director of the books, Anna Scott, will talk to you about the projects in this issue of Inspirations.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see so many faces here today. First up, in this issue, we have, and I'm glad in a way it's the first, a pillow or cushion by our very own Chris Richards. The cushion... Chris is over here. What always intrigues me when we see Chris's projects, when she brings them in, is that where some embroiderers rely heavily on using a multitude of fancy threads and variegated colours and this, that and the other, and they scour through their embroidery stitch dictionaries to use a multitude of peculiar stitches. Chris's projects come in and she uses primarily threads that are very, very easy to come by. Her range of stitches is usually fairly limited, and yet she produces again and again the most gorgeous and spectacular projects that we can all enjoy, and you can look at them and relate to them and know, yes, this is beautiful, and yes, this is something that I can easily do myself. This particular cushion, it's always interesting to know where these ideas come from, and we spoke to Chris about that. For this particular piece, she had originally planned to embroider her dainty floral sprays on the damask, on the floral damask that is now used only as the side panels. But one day, scouring through her piles of fabric, she found a piece that she had had stored away for years, and it was a piece of printed cotton with black and white stripes and pink flower sprays over the top of it, and thus came the idea of the dainty flower sprays over the self-striped fabric.
The second projects in the magazine are for love of knitting, and these are bags to put your knitting needles into. These are made by Gail Doan from Utah in the United States, and as well as being a very prolific smocker and embroiderer, Gail's also a knitter, and of course any knitter worth her salt needs something impressive to keep her knitting needles in. So one of the bags is designed to hold knitting needles. Heidi, can you just open that up so people can see it inside? And you can see it's all beautifully decorated on the outside with a combination of... Oh, that one's cast-on stitch flowers. So if you've never done cast-on stitch flowers and you'd like to have a go at them, this might be a good project for you. And then it's all beautifully lined with black and white check, and then this one has the pockets for all of your knitting needles. Mine personally are in a very tatty cardboard box, so I feel a little bit ashamed, but I'm sure Gail, being such a good friend of mine, will whip me up one of these in no time. So, and the one that Chris has, which is different, is for sets of needles, sets of 4 or 5 needles, and it's got, again, pockets and a plastic strip along the bottom with the label so that you know exactly what everything is. You have no excuse for not being able to find the right knitting needle. And again, it's embroidered with a combination of cast-on stitch flowers, and there's also some bullion stitch flowers on that one. Beautifully finished. If you have a look closely at these things, they are just impeccably finished. They make me want to cry. And Gail's coming over to teach at Beating Around the Bush, so if these sorts of finishes interest you and you're interested in learning how she gets such an incredibly accurate finish, then I suggest that you do some of her classes, because she's a fabulous teacher and she'll just tell you all those little tips and tricks for getting things just exactly right. She's a bit manic and she drives me nuts, but you know, that's what she does, and she's fabulous at it. So they're her wonderful knitting bags.
Next up is something rather unusual. I don't think we've had anything similar. It's called kalocha, and it's a Hungarian cutwork technique, always embroidered in really, really bright colours. We're usually often when we see cutwork techniques or any lacy type of embroidery, it's most commonly white on white. where these pieces stemming from Hungary are always done with very, very bright colours. It is worked just on a calico, and once all the embroidery is worked, virtually all the fabric is cut away, so the only thing holding the whole thing together is the chill stitches that are worked as a net in between the flowers. It is made by Peter Macmillan, who was mentioned, who had pieces in the front pages as well, and I think she's done the envelopes, and she has had Snutki in previously. So she does all these types of fairly unusual embroidery techniques. Peter is also coming over to teach at Beating Around the Bush, so again there's an opportunity to give something a go that is very different to what you may usually do.
The next thing is the fish, well, what's known sort of as the fish blanket. It's known in my house as a fish blanket. It's actually called Gone Fishing, and it's the blanket on the back here with the fish on it. There are probably several people floating around Australia who I owe a huge apology to, because this was supposed to be published about 2.5 years ago, but unfortunately it took me a little bit longer to finish than I would have thought. Basically it's a camel wool and cashmere blanket, and along the bottom are embroidered, these are all freshwater fish. Some of them are indigenous to Australia, some of them aren't, and I chose the fish. The redfin I chose because that was the first fish I ever caught, even though my uncle swore that I would never be capable of catching a fish because I wasn't capable of being quiet for 10 minutes and you need to be quiet to fish. There's a tilapia on it, there's an archerfish from Queensland, a gudgeon and a dugong. The golden perch, which my parents used to have a couple of houseboats up on the Murray, out of Renmark, and that was one of the fish that we used to catch off the houseboat, was the golden perch. And then the big trout in the middle. This is embroidered with a thread from Coron called Impressions. It's a 50% silk, 50% wool thread, absolutely beautiful thread to use. And then up the top, part of the reason this took such a long time to finish was because I wanted to put fishing flies on it, but I wasn't quite sure how I was going to put them on it. So I found some sayings about fly fishing, and I decided to use one of those and then to intersperse the flies amongst the text. Over the past few years I've done quite a bit of travelling around the US, and I have been to more fly fishing shops than is probably and met more interesting men who know so much about fly fishing. I've bought flies in Santa Fe in New Mexico, in the middle of Kansas, and I've always found people who are involved in fly fishing to be quite charming and very helpful, and they don't even look at you strangely when you tell them that you want to buy the flies to embroider them. So quite a remarkable type of person, I think, is the fly fisherman. But this is really a blanket for a man, and my husband has dibs on this one. Not that he's a fly fisherman, but it's not a difficult blanket to do. It takes a lot of time to do all of that stitching. And just one other thing too, when I was about to start it, and putting designs onto any sort of blanketing or wool fabric is always difficult. So with this, what I did was I actually drew all the fish out onto white felt and put all the markings onto them, and then I've just stitched the felt onto the blanketing, and then all the stitching is done over the top of the felt. So you don't actually have to mark anything onto the blanket at all. And I found that was a really effective way of transferring a design onto a piece of blanketing. Really only works for things that are solid shapes, but it's a good way of transferring your design onto something like that. So even if you only stitch one fish, I hope you have a little go at that one and get lots of enjoyment out of it. Thank you.
The next project, or pair of projects we have in this issue, is two gorgeous little stump work pots by Jane Nicholas. These make ideal gifts, and they are a fabulous way. If you haven't done stump work before, they are a really good introduction to this raised and dimensional embroidery techniques. She uses, in these two projects, she's both got padded and fully detached shapes where she makes little elements and then stitches them onto the main embroidery afterwards. They're similar. Some of you may remember the little berry pots that Jan Curtin had in quite a few issues ago. These are sort of similar type of thing, and they're just fantastic for gift ideas coming up to Christmas. Joan Nicholas is another one of our beating around the bush tutors, and she, from what I know of her, is a fantastic and very, very knowledgeable tutor when it comes to stump work embroidery. These little designs, the materials again are fairly straightforward to get hold of, and because the designs are so small, it is something you can do in a limited amount of time, where otherwise stump work can be a rather time-consuming affair to delve into. So have a go at these ones. I'm sure that once you get started, it will be difficult for you to put it aside.